Alrighty friends, we're going to spice up your life. Welcome to Heritage Ways. I'm Miss Katie, and you have found us here at Heritage Ways, where we honor home, celebrate heritage, and spread hope. Today, I want to talk to you about herbs and spices and how I store them, what I store them in, how I have so many in our tiny home. This is a topic that has kind of been requested. A friend of mine and I were talking about not long ago, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. But also another friend had said she would like a pantry tour. Well, I started that video a while back and never did finish it. So if y'all were interested in an entire pantry tour of our current home, then let me know and I'll finish that video up and get it out for you. We currently live in an RV and we travel around the nation to serve and encourage and meet friends and make connections and build community. We've lived on 2 farms in the past, the one I grew up on and the one we raised our big boys on in the 1830s home, and the second, more recent home where we had 5 children still at home, and it was a wonderful home as well. In fact, talking about pantry and spices, I have a tour of the last farmhouse we lived in and the pantry, a pantry tour, including how I kept my spices. Today I want to give you a tour of my spice cabinet, how I have a maximum amount of spices in a small space. We do hope, Lord willing, to settle down as soon as the Lord allows into our next homestead. And after a year and a half, I'm still happy with the fact I brought all of these spices on board. I even have some that you would say, what in the world would you do with that? Well, let me show you a little bit, and let's look at it in the pantry, and then we're going to set this out on the counter and talk just a little bit more. I have my cookbooks here in the back, and just right up here, these are not necessarily all spices, but I want to point out my fermented garlic, which is wonderful. And then I've got dehydrated peppers that are from our garden 2 years ago, and I'm still using those. I've got dehydrated cabbage and some okra from our garden 2 years ago. Maybe it was 3 years ago now. And then this is a chai tea mix. So I make a lot of my own mixes. In fact, I don't even buy spice mix packets. And I've got some of those recipes in my cookbook, which if you're interested in purchasing, there's a link down below. And I have some videos here on YouTube about spice mixes. So that's my chai tea mix. Then the next level, I've got baking powder and baking soda. And this is my taco seasoning mix. It can, I can take off the wax paper and I can sprinkle it if necessary, or I can just open it and measure it out. Except I don't measure stuff. And now here are my extracts, my all natural. There's cherry and maple and lemon and almond and different ones that I need. What I've done, I've actually bought those as I needed them here on the road. I didn't bring those from the other house because I didn't know what I'd be making. But we use a lot of maple extract because we actually make our maple syrup last longer by making kind of a homemade maple flavored syrup and then adding that. We have a video about that as well you might be interested in. Okay, so here is some rosemary that I had dried, so that's back here, and some chervil. Okay, so that's, and then what I'm going to pull out here in a minute, I'm going to pull out this entire wire basket. And I have 2 wire baskets that are different, and I'll explain that. But on this level, I have some pizza seasoning blend, which I did not make. I purchased so I could see if I could replicate it. Basil. Some of that I grew a couple of years ago. Some of that's from a friend. And here's our straws and my Slap Ya Mama. All right, now, that's what's in front of my wire baskets. Then I'm going to, let's pull each of these wire baskets out and I'll explain the difference in the two, and you're going to probably be surprised at how many spices and herbs I have here in our tiny home, our RV kitchen pantry. All right, I have 2 wire baskets. Now, you should note that I never pull. It's not necessary to pull this basket out. I just did it today to show y'all, and I've got 2 baskets. This one is all of my ground seasonings and spices and herbs, anything that's ground up, powdered and ground. The other one would be whole, what I'd call whole spices. So I'm not going to tell you everything that's in here, but I might show you some unique ones that you might wonder why I have them. But I've got the basics: onion powder. Oh, and I wanted to show you, I keep them in these jelly jars. Now, this is not what I kept them in when we lived in the other house. I kept them in larger jars, and I'll tell you where I get my spices here in a minute. But I kept them in larger jars. And when we moved here, I love labels. Do y'all like labels? I mean, it doesn't cost anything hardly to make sweet little homespun labels. So I put them in these smaller jelly jars, and most of them have the jelly jar lids, canning lids that came with them. I do have some of these plastic leak-proof ball jars that I love so much. That's especially important when you have something like a seasoning that has clove in it, because clove will eat through, you know, if it comes in something, the thin plastic, like this for example, this is how I get mine, but if it comes in something like that, your clove, it will eat through it. It'll start making it look cloudy and it will eat through it. So you need to get it in glass right away. Also, I've noticed it could also corrode the metal lid. So I like these for anything, anything that has clove in it. This is my apple and pumpkin pie spice, or my, you know, for your pumpkin pie latte, pumpkin pie or apple pie, or your pumpkin spice lattes and that kind of thing. Muffins, bread. Okay, so I've got all kinds. Now, I like to keep, I started out kind of keeping these in alphabetical order, but it didn't happen that way over time, because what's on top is what I use the most. They are double-decker in here. And let's see, you know, I've got turmeric and I've got cinnamon. These are on top. Chili pepper or chili powder, cardamom. These are the ones I use the most. So these are on top. Cumin, ground mustard, sage, curry powder, nutmeg. Look at that vintage looking lid. I love that. Okay, and I have in this little container, I've got my vanilla powder. Used that just last night for to put in a meringue instead of putting vanilla flavoring. Not a meringue, but a whipped topping for a pie. I used some vanilla powder. Love that stuff. Okay, now it's rare that I would keep something in here that's not in my standard jars. But I bought this ground ginger and never put it in anything else. And then the turmeric, I kept that only because I like the glass jar itself and it's not plastic. Hickory smoked salt is something that is kind of a splurge. Well, it was $1. I mean a splurge because I never buy that kind of thing, and I didn't have a jar designated for it. So when it's gone, I'll throw that container away. I do have my mace in a smaller container. This is not the stuff you spray in people's faces. This is a seasoning, but it's good for pound cake, and other recipes call for it. My Beaumont seasoning that I use in my potato salad recipes in my cookbook, I think that calls for mace. All right, now, and then down here, more of, you know, there's more spiced chai. There's my Beaumont I was talking about. I will not make potato salad without that. My filet for gumbo. So anyway, you get the idea. There's the ground cloves, and it's got, it's a metal lid, but it's protected underneath, so it's not going to corrode. All right, down below, I'd like for you to write, what is your, either tell me what you think is the most weird or unique spice that I have, or tell me what is the most unique spice that you have or you like to use. You know, I know maybe a lot of people don't use white pepper. I love it. Won't make mashed potatoes without it. My Uncle Pete, my German baker Uncle Pete, taught me that. So I want to know what is the most unique spice that you have, or a spice that you bought and you're like, I don't remember why I bought that, and what am I going to do with that? All right, I'm going to put these back in here, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the other cabinet or the other basket, and then I'm going to show you a whole tub more of spices and tell you what I'm going to do with those. All right, I have the next basket, and I want to give a shout out to my friend who actually inspired this video. My friend Michelle is a homesteader out west, and she is at Little Miss Wannabe Homesteader. She's on YouTube, and she's got a great presence on Instagram. Every Tuesday she sponsors a hashtag called Wannabe Recipes, and she encourages people to share recipes. It's just a really neat hashtag that I've participated in a few times. It's really fun. She's great. You ought to check her out. But Michelle was asking this question: how do you organize your spices and have so many? How do you store them? How do you organize them? Michelle actually had a post on Instagram not long ago that started this conversation, and she was labeling her spices, and I was telling her how I enjoy labeling mine so very much. Okay, so this would be something that's not ground, not powdered. So of course you've got, you know, your what they call whole cloves, so chives, and there's minced onion, there's fennel seed. Now there are a couple of exceptions to my jar plan here. These came in jars, and that's rare these days that things would come in jars, so I kept them. And so I've got my herbs de Provence and my caraway seed and my fennel seed. Those two are essential in my Chicago style deep dish pizza sauce. Also, as a side note, for digestive issues, my friends, we have a lot of Amish friends, and my Amish friends put a mixture of herb seeds in their pockets, and they can pull them out and chew on them if they have digestive issues, you know, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, that kind of thing. So these three would be dill seed, caraway seed, and fennel seed. A mixture of those kind of mixed together. I've done the same. I put it in little baby food jars, and you have upset stomach, indigestion. I'm not going to claim that it'll cure it, but it will settle down the digestive system to chew on those dried seeds. All right, so we've got these. Now we've got cinnamon. There's where I bought it from the bulk food store. There's where I got it out of a, store. And then my everything bagel, I bought this so that I could learn to make my own. And here's another version of it from the Spice and Tea Exchange in Blowing Rock, North Carolina. I recommend that place. It's spiceandtea.com, and you can buy spices online, but we've been to the store and it's awesome. All right, so again, I won't name every one of these. They're pretty standard. My favorite herb in the whole wide world is rosemary. What's yours? I'd love to know. Now, here's one you might think is strange, and why on earth do I have it? Star anise. Are you familiar? This can be used for many things. Oh, it's got such a strong licorice scent, a clean licorice scent. Some people don't care for that. Mr. Patient's one of them. But I love it. I use it, again, the recipe's in my cookbook, but I use it in my Christmas spiced tea in my 45 cup urn. I use it for that. I was not willing to come on board and travel full time without my spices. Right, I even have my black peppercorns. I do not have a pepper grinder on board, but I do use them for roast and things like that. All right, let's see. All right, and I've got poppy seeds. I've got almost anything one would need to make a recipe. Honestly, I've pretty much used nearly every one of these items in a year and a half. This is my French onion soup mix that I make homemade. I've got a video about it and it's in my cookbook. Love that. Yeah, I've pretty much used everything. Love it. Now, a couple of things I want to show you. I've been making for years my own spice mixes. Now, just recently I started sharing with our patrons, on Patreon, and for the 2019 thank you gifts for supporting us, I sent them some spice blends, and I loved sharing that, and I loved fixing them up with labels to make it kind of look like a professional or a real food line. These I just put together for myself because it was easier than keeping them in jars. And this is just a Cincinnati style chili mix, which that's in my cookbook and I have a video. And this is just chili seasoning mix for standard chili. And these are just for us. If I was going to give them to somebody, I would write the directions, the ingredients, invite them to walk life with us at our different platforms and so forth. So this is just something fun I've done for myself and to conserve space so that I don't have to have these spice mixes in big jars. Now let me show you, before we wrap up the video, let me show you what my dad and his wife blessed me with. Oh my word, where it came from and what I'm going to do with it. Okay friends, well this is the last portion of the video. I wanted to show you that lately, well not lately, for years, I mean, wow, 20 something years I've been making my own spice mixes. I guess 30 actually. And I love making my own spice mixes. Some of the ones I've kept in the past without fail are, of course, our ranch seasoning mix, French onion seasoning mix, the pumpkin spice mix, or apple pie spice mix. But I've loved branching out. Oh, chili seasoning mix, of course. I always keep that in a half-gallon jar in the farmhouses we've had. Here's a half-gallon jar and a quart jar. Well, lately, and yes, I do all this on my tiny home. I say on my tiny home on wheels. Lately, I've been experimenting with some others. It's a basic French dressing mix. It's an herb dressing mix, an Italian garden dressing mix, an herb broth mix, all natural ingredients. I don't add any kind of preservatives or anything like that. And I do try to use the highest quality spices I can manage. Now, you can go wherever, Walmart and Dollar Tree and buy spices there. I'm not going to tell you not to do that. I do really like to buy spices from my Amish friends who get them in bulk and repackage them. I feel like they have been on the shelf less amount of time than maybe they had at Walmart or Aldi or wherever, where they sat somewhere and then they were shipped to the store. Now, there was a time when I would this was years ago, I would throw spices away every 6 months, or 6 months to a year, depending on what the spices were, because that's what was recommended, because they lose some of their potency. I do not do that now. I do not throw them away. All right, so just recently, and real quick, I'll tell you that I've got this many more of these stacks right here at my feet, and I'm using them to make spice mixes. Like I said, I've been sharing with some friends around here and with our patrons on Patreon. I might be interested in coming up with a line of spice products one of these days. I do want to show you though, you see how clear this container is? Can you tell? Like, it's just a clear plastic container. You see what I was saying about the clove a while ago? Can you tell this is cloudy? Can you see that? It's kind of cloudy. Well, I've got to get this clove out of here and into a jar. It burns it. Burns it. Not eats it as much as burns it. So that's what I'm doing. I mean, I've made this alphabet soup mix, and all you got to do is mix it with water and maybe some tomato juice. Sometimes we had to buy these recently because I didn't have enough of the bulk spices. We bought this at Gordon Food Service, GFS. But I don't buy spices at your big box store or store like that. So my dad and his wife, my family farm is in Ohio, and I sent them a list of things I was needing, including some einkorn flour and such. And they were so gracious to get those for me as my Christmas gift. So I have plenty of spices, and I'm just, you know, ready to roll. I'm ready to spice up my family's life. If you have any questions about how I keep my spices or my spice cabinet, and again, go check out Michelle at Little Miss Wannabe Homesteader, YouTube and Instagram especially. I am glad y'all joined me today, and I hope that something here inspired you to spice up your life.